Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Welcome to Dev with Excel. Alright, so in this video we shall be solving exercise 3.9. In the previous video we saw how we could solve exercise 3.8, right? And we are able to properly implement the code to solve it. Alright, so in this exercise 3.9, which is the step 9 of the PhoneBook backend, the instruction is this: make the backend work with the PhoneBook frontend from the exercises of the previous part. Do not implement the functionality for making changes to the phone numbers yet. That will be implemented in exercise 3.7. So we are expected to use the exercises in the phone book front end in the previous parts, right? But this exercise does not include the exercise that helps us with the update functionality of the phone numbers, right? So let's go into the code implementation for this exercise 3.9 first. All right, so this is my VS Code, and as we can see, we have a lot of folders here. Okay, all right, so here we are going to be targeting the folder for this exercise 3.9. As we can see, I've created this setup folder, right? So I'm simply going to be moving into this folder, right? So let's cd into that folder. So before we do that, let's also close these files. These are not the files we are dealing with just yet. All right, awesome. So let's hold on a bit. Let's split this also. So here I'm simply going to cd into step 9, right? And then do npm run dev. So this is going to help us to test the backend, right? So we want to currently run the server, which will eventually help us test the backend. All right, so our server is currently running for this exercise, and then we want to test it if it's working before we move further into the code implementation for exercise 3.9. All right, so let's test this backend. In the previous videos, we used Thunder clients, right? So we are going to be using Thunder clients still. So let's try the get, right? Let's see if we can get this data again by clicking on the send button. Let's expand this. So when we click on the send key, we get the data, right? Also, when we try to delete a particular data with an ID, so here let's try to delete one of these data. Let's choose the data with the ID of 1. So let's click on send. So we can see that we have every other data excluding the data with the ID of 1. So that means that the delete worked very well, right? All right, so that also goes for post, but we won't be testing post for now. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to head into the code implementation proper. Let's go back to the instruction to be very sure of what we are doing. So the instruction here says, make the backend work with the phone book front end from the exercises of the previous part, right? So we are going to be using the front end to work this also. So here we want to integrate the front end with the back end. So what we can do here is that it says here that do not implement the functionality for making changes to the phone numbers yet. So there's a particular exercise before the update of phone numbers, right? And that's in part 2. So going to part 2, here is part 2. Let's click on the exercises here. Let's come down to exercise 2.15. Here we can see that it says that change the functionality so that if a number is added to an already existing user, the new number will replace the old number. It's recommended to use the HTTP put method for updating the phone number, right? So here we can see that this is the aspect that we are expected not to work with, right? That means we are going to be working with the exercise before this 2.14, which is exercise. Sorry, we are going to be working with the exercise 2.14, yes, which is before exercise 2.15. Now this is exercise 2.14. That's the step 9 of the phone book. So this is the setup folder we shall be working with. All right, so going back to the VS Code, let's locate exercise 2.14. All right, so coming to the part 2 under the phone book, exercise 2.14, we understand that it's the step 9, right, of that exercise. Let's confirm. Step 9, that's exercise 2.14. All right, so here is what we can do. So we simply just cd into this part here. It says cd, and then we do npm run dev as well. So this means that both our server and the front end are expected to be running, right? So let's be sure that this front end is running. Awesome, it's running. All right, so let's just do something like this. Let's open some of the files here. So this is the app.jsx. This is the name.js. So we are concerned with this file most especially. So here we can just minimize this and then do the same here. So let's expand this again, and then let's go to the local hosts for the front end. Let's be sure that our front end works properly, right? So here we can see that this front end works properly, but it's not returning the data from the back end. So this is what we are supposed to solve now, right? So this works properly. Now let's see what the error is. Going to the developers tool, we want to confirm what the error is. It says access to HTML request at. Okay, so let's go back to this part. Here we can see that this was the initial URL, right, that we worked with, but now the URL changed in our recent backend. The backend we have right now, let's load the file. Here, our backend, the endpoint is /API/persons, right? Not /persons as it's were here, right? So we are going to be changing this. So let's change this base URL. Let's duplicate this first, and then let's comment this, and then let's do something like this. Let's say integrating front end with back end. Then let's comment it. Now we are going to be changing this from /persons to /API/persons, right? Now let's save this. Having saved this, the next thing we want to do is, okay, so here we can see that when we refresh this, we are still having the same error here. It says access to XML HTTP request at this endpoint from origin has been blocked by CORS policy, right? So here we are having some issues with our CORS policy. Now, what does this mean? Let's go back to our part 3 notes, and then let's click on this same origin policy and CORS. Now let's read something around here. Around, yes, so here it says if the resource is fetched using a URL that doesn't share the same origin, that's scheme, host, and port, as the source HTML, the browser will have to check the access control allow origin response header. If it contains asterisk on the URL of the source HTML, the browser will process the response. Otherwise, the browser will refuse to process it and throws an error. So here, technically, what we need to do is we need to simply use what we call the CORS library, right? So we are going to be going to the back end to implement that. So in the back end, that's index.js, we are supposed to import the CORS library and then use it as a middleware, right? Now let's see how that can be done. So we simply just come to the backend. This is the backend, right? So let's close this connection, and then let's install CORS, right? So let's click on enter to install CORS. So let's just give it some time while that is done. And while that is happening, okay, awesome, that's already true. So it's already done. So let's run the server again using the npm run dev. Now coming down to the package.json, we see that CORS is installed now, right, successfully. All right, so inside the index.js, we need to import CORS by saying const CORS is equal to require CORS. Let's save this, and then we use this as a middleware, right? So right before this express.json, we simply just say app.use cause. So this is it, right? So let's be sure that this is running properly. All right, so it says server is running successfully. Now let's minimize this again and do the same here. So let's go back to the front end again and see what we have. Let's refresh this. All right, so here we can see that we have all the data listed under the numbers here, right? So that means that this works very well, right? So I think with this we've been able to successfully implement the code for exercise 3.9, which is this, right? So let's be sure that we've been able to do everything. Let's read more. It says you will probably have to do some small changes to the front end, which we've done. Yes. Remember to keep the developer console open in your browser. Yes. All right. So with this, I believe we've been able to successfully run or solve the exercise 3.9, right? So see you in the next video. Bye.